and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Reagan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you very much for listening to us. We talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the reg, go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple or Spotify. When you get there, rate, review, download, but make sure you subscribe, because if you do subscribe, you won't miss our shows when we drop them on Mondays. That's our normal schedule. But right now, with Tennessee in the thick of the playoff hunt, we are doing our shows on Tuesdays after the playoff announcement. And obviously, we're going to react to that whole thing tonight. So just hit the notification bell on YouTube. And then at the A to Z Sports Tennessee Volunteers channel. And if you hit that notification bell, then you'll be notified when we go live. You can watch the show live. You'll know when it happened live. Then you'll know when the podcast goes up. Everybody win. Just go do that. YouTube, podcast, at Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for everything that Zach writes over on the internet. So I think for tonight's show, it's going to be, obviously we got to react immediately to this playoff stuff. Tennessee back in the playoff. Let's go. Chance is right there for you. Opportunity of a lifetime. And then we'll talk a little Vandy, because that's what's standing between you and the playoff. What is up, Zach?
What a season. We're down here right at the very end. Unbelievable.
Seriously.
But hey, right where we were hoping Tennessee would be. So all comes down to this last game and see how the seeding works out. But it's like it'd be a really fun December. Like, I have no idea what to expect from this playoff. And if Tennessee gets in, can't imagine the anxiety that we're going to have going to that first round game. But got to get past Vandy on Saturday first.
There's so many possibilities here. Obviously, I mean, we're going to talk to all of them. And I think, well, we'll talk through all of them. As of right now, Tennessee projected to play at Georgia again in the playoff. But I think, rest assured, I'm fairly certain that's not going to happen. But and we'll talk about why. And then, as I said, we're going to preview the Vandy game, get to all of that, and maybe even talk a little basketball in Bahamas, because the basketball team went in, kicked Baylor's butt, kind of just threw around Virginia. I mean, it was an impressive showing for them, so maybe we'll talk about that right at the end. Also, but let's get right to it. Right after I tell you about the good folks at Zen Sports. It's never too early to start thinking about the big game. And this November, Zen Sports, the new sports book in Tennessee, has launched a brand new sweepstakes for all of its Tennessee customers, the Big Game Sweepstakes. And you can win a grand prize of 2 tickets to Super Bowl 59 in New Orleans, or $10,000 cash. And of course, if you pay attention to time, you'll know that it's nearing the end of November. So make sure you go and download and get in on this right now. If you want in on the action, you can earn multiple entries every day just by betting on the Zen Sports app. With every bet you place, you'll earn an entry, and for every dollar you bet, you'll earn an additional entry. And if you like parlays, you'll earn double the entries for every parlay that's placed. Frankly, here's the thing. What are you waiting for? Go and download it. Go get in on this action and be a part of the sweepstakes. You'll also even get the $100 no danger first wager. If your first bet loses, you're reimbursed for the amount of your bet up to $100. Start betting with Zen Sports today. Download that app right now. Zen Sports. Betting just got better. If you have a gambling problem, 1-800-889-9789. No danger wager limited to plus 500 odds to qualify. Terms and conditions apply. A qualifying wager for a wager entry must have minimum odds for any leg in the entry of at least minus 250. Minus 251 does not qualify. Head to zensports.com/sweepstakes for contest terms and conditions. Must be 21 or older in Tennessee to bet. Let's get to it, Zach. Tennessee is your number 8 seed. They hopped Indiana. They stay in front of SMU. And they are so close to hosting. But at the current projection that was just announced right before we came on air, they would be traveling to Athens, Georgia to play Georgia again. Now, with that said, The likelihood of that happening, in my opinion, is pretty low because first, I think Georgia's going to win the SEC championship game, and I think they will move up, and Texas will move down, and then that shuffles all of that around. If Georgia loses, I think Georgia moves down. They showed last year that they'll move a team for losing in a championship game. They may not move them out of the playoff. In fact, I don't think they'll move Georgia out of the playoff in that scenario, but they might move them down. And so I don't think you'll be playing at Georgia, but Zach, your initial thoughts about Tennessee being back in after falling out for a week?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is pretty much where we thought they would be going into tonight. The right number 8, number 9 seed in the bracket there. The last team that would be playing on the highest ranked team that would be playing on the road, basically, like you were talking about. It seems about right, and I think that's fair. Based on the way the committee is ranking. I think we've all believed that head to head should matter. So clearly, being behind Georgia makes sense. It would be interesting if Alabama was still in there, how that would shake out. Probably not well for Tennessee. But it seems about where they're supposed to be, and you're pretty much, you beat Vanderbilt, you're locked in. I mean, you don't have to worry about another team jumping you. You've got a little bit of buffer room there because as the 9 seed, you got about 2 or 3 spots you could fall or that you could be jumped, which doesn't seem likely. The only way, like if Texas A&M were to beat Texas and then beat Georgia in the SEC championship game, then suddenly A&M is in the tournament no matter what. Who knows how that would affect Georgia, because they claim that losing in the SEC championship game that you're not really going to get penalized for it. But considering Georgia was last season, we don't know how they'll play that. And Texas is an interesting one too. I don't know what happens if they suffer another loss, because they don't really have any great wins. Super strong argument that Tennessee could jump Texas. There's a lot of scenarios that can still play out this last weekend, and it's very, very possible that Tennessee can still end up hosting a playoff game. They need a little bit of help for that to happen, but it's very much in the mix. So beyond just beating Vanderbilt, there will be plenty to watch for on Saturday.
Obviously, the dream is that you host a game in Neyland. I mean, genuinely, stop with me for a second and imagine that scene. Like what that would be like in Knoxville, Tennessee, hosting a playoff game. And especially not to wish that Tennessee just has a rosy, easy path here, but especially if it's against like Indiana. And not that would be super easy. Indiana's a formidable team, but I think Tennessee would be favored over Indiana, maybe by a decent chunk. And then you're playing in Knoxville. I mean, what a scene that would be. Be still my heart. That would just be so awesome. A lot has to happen for you to get there. When I think about it, I think there's 2 camps, and nobody knows exactly how this is going to shake out. There's the teams are going to be punished for conference championships camp, and then there's no way that they're going to punish teams for conference championships. I think they will. And so, and not quote unquote punish, but they're going to go, oh, Georgia's a 3-loss team now. Like, you can't just look over that and be like, oh, no, like Georgia did beat Texas. Oh, they lost to Texas. I mean, they did beat Texas earlier in the season, but they also lost to Texas. And it's not like you can just overlook that. Like Ohio State. I don't think Ohio State, if they, let's say Oregon kicks their doors in, I don't think Ohio State's staying at 2. Maybe I'm wrong. Ward Emanuel spoke tonight. He didn't commit one way or another, but that does matter. That matters a lot, because that's what would shake up a lot of this, most likely, because I think it's likely that Ohio State beats Michigan, although after this past weekend, God knows, frankly, one of the craziest weekends I've ever seen in college football in my lifetime. But I think they make it. I think Notre Dame beats USC again. Who truly knows? But more likely than not, I don't think USC is a very good football team. There's just some things that could happen there, or that could happen, but I don't think will.
There's
And
some
so it's going to come down to the conference championships. Maybe
there's some really wild scenarios that are on the table still that I really don't know how it would impact everything. And you gotta just the way this season's gone, you gotta feel like at least one of those happens, right? Like some sort of chaos
Probably.
is gonna happen in this last week of the regular season. Hopefully it doesn't involve Tennessee and Vanderbilt, but we'll get to that later. Uh One scenario that's kind of crazy to think about and is super unlikely, but based on what we've seen some this season, I don't think it's completely out of the question. What happens if, you know, A&M beats Texas this weekend? So they go to the SEC championship game, and Georgia shockingly loses to Georgia Tech, who's not playing bad football. They beat Miami earlier this season. I mean, and Georgia's not the typical Georgia that we've seen. I mean, they struggled with UMass a little bit last week before they finally pulled away.
Yeah.
I mean, what happens? And then say Georgia wins the SEC championship. Now, there's a scenario where you lose to Georgia Tech and you lose to A&M and you're out. But Georgia, let's say A&M beats Texas, they're in. Georgia loses to Georgia Tech, and then it sets up Georgia 3 losses already against A&M with 3 losses. Winner gets in type of thing, I guess. Where does Georgia fall then, though? They would be a 3-loss SEC champion. I mean, there's some chaotic things that really could happen.
Yeah.
That's a very unlikely scenario, but at this point, you just can't rule it out because it's been a wild, crazy season, and it feels like there's going to be at least one upset this weekend that we don't see coming.
Yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff. I don't think if Tennessee beats Vandy, obviously every part of this conversation that we're having at this point is assuming Tennessee will beat Vandy. As I mentioned, we're going to preview that closer to the end of the show and kind of give our thoughts on how easy or not easy we think that game against Vandy is going to be. But I don't know that this one would affect Tennessee if Tennessee can get past Vandy. But Clemson, South Carolina, like that one has some implications. I don't know what it would take for the ACC championship game. SMU, if they went out, obviously they're in, and I guess it would be against Clemson. I'm not going to act like I know for certain, but I believe that would be the setup. And then the winner there. I mean, there's an example for you right there. You can't ignore an SEC. You can't ignore a conference championship game because that one I think has the direct implication on everything, particularly on SMU spot. SMU is in, and if they lose that game against Clemson, they should be out. You can't just be like, oh, well, you made the conference championship game, so we got to keep it. No, you got to boot them out of there and probably put Clemson in.
I mean, the conference championships are a weird thing, but it's still a tool to measure who the best teams are. And ultimately, that's what you're trying to do is get the teams that need to be competing for a championship. And obviously, you have these conference automatic bids and some of this stuff that waters that down a little bit. But at the end of the day, for the most part, you want the best teams in this tournament. And if you've got SMU versus Clemson, then it's almost like a de facto playoff game in a sense. Like you find out which team's better, which team gets to move on. It's not a great setup, but it is the setup they have. And I think you have to recognize the results of that game and consider it no matter who it is, SEC, Big Ten, whatever the situation, it has to matter. Like you can't just throw it out the window. Otherwise, you've kind of degraded that game in itself. And maybe that is the case to this point. I don't think they're ever going to go away. There's just too much money involved in it, and it is a big tradition that you've had for quite some time now, especially in the SEC. But I just think those results have to matter. It's hard for me to say that it doesn't.
Well, in one scenario that I could see happen, if they don't want to quote unquote punish Georgia for losing to Texas, since Texas is ranked higher than them, I guess you could drop Georgia and also drop Tennessee to 9. Like drop Georgia 1 spot to 8. And because Georgia beat Tennessee, you have to drop Tennessee. Also, you don't let Tennessee hop them. And then that, again, to my point earlier, that would change that traveling to Athens matchup. Suddenly that would have you facing somebody else because you would be the 10 seed in that case, most likely. And so there's there's just 1,000 things that could happen here. as far as that goes, I was kind of trying to think through. Let's see. Let's look on Saturday. Obviously, you're playing a noon game, so you're not going to know any consequences except for your own at the beginning there. And if you can get through that,
Which I like that, by the way. I don't like
do.
Just beat Vandy and you're hosting a home game, and then all of a sudden you lose and you're out
I know.
altogether. Like just
With
go play the game.
with the stakes being even higher.
Yes.
Although so Michigan Ohio State is at noon, so at the end you may know if Ohio State loses that game. Again, I don't think they're gonna. It's in the horseshoe. I think
I would be very surprised, but yeah, again, that's a game.
21-point favorites. Ohio
these
State.
Rivalry games, sometimes weird things happen.
Yeah, it happens every single day. Miami Syracuse is at 3:30.
That one could get weird too.
Oh,
yeah.
for sure. And and so sorry, when I was talking about the ACC championship game right now, it would be SMU Miami. Sorry, I completely glazed over because both of Clemson's losses are against ACC. No, they're other losses against Georgia.
Georgia, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what the ACC championship game would be. Where they're because SMU for sure because their only losses against BYU. BYU's in the Big 12. Yeah. But between Miami and Clemson, I don't know how that.
I think if Miami loses to Syracuse, it pushes Clemson in. That would seem
right.
Right, yeah. Clemson,
I guess
Clemson SMU is what that would be, I would assume.
Who did Clemson lose? Clemson lost to Louisville. Miami lost to Georgia Tech. If they both have one AC, I don't know. I don't know
what their tiebreaker is. ACC might not know. It's all up in the air for everybody.
But the Iron Bowl is at 3:30. You have Penn State, Maryland, although that's another one. It's in State College. So, I say fat chance. Maryland's a pretty bad football team.
Yeah.
Also, this 3:30 block, this is kind of everything. Notre Dame at USC is at that 3:30 block. That would be 12:30 local in Los Angeles.
If you can pull it off, Lincoln Riley, just
please.
They did beat what? They beat A&M earlier this year, right?
They did. That's their one truly good win.
Which I think was the first game of the year, wasn't it? So
yeah. And then Washington at Oregon, but even if they lose that one, I don't think Oregon's dropping out.
Oregon's losing that game.
And Texas at Texas A&M is your late slate for the SEC, and
I thought that's a toss-up.
That's going to be a fun one, man.
At A&M.
Yes.
Texas hasn't really proven anything yet this season in a big game like that. And it's not like
Ewers apparently injured to some extent.
Yeah, down an ankle.
Yep.
Playing though.
That one has kind of cursed weirdness written all over it, just like some sort of double OT, Lord knows.
And A&M's still alive. If they win out, which is Texas and Georgia, they're in. So they have plenty to play for.
Oh, here, Austin weighing in. If Miami wins at Syracuse, the Louisville win. Okay, so a common opponent in Louisville, Miami beat Louisville, and so so it would be Miami SMU. All righty, fine. And who let's see, who is SMU? It's Cal at SMU. I think that's a win for SMU if SMU stays correct there. So. It's going to be a wild day.
Situation where they probably want Miami to win, so they don't have to go play Clemson because they just have one loss and then two ACC teams get in. Is that
probably? Yeah. Weirdly.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing. It's the same time like with Tennessee. You see what happened last Saturday, and all this stuff was going in Tennessee's favor, and it's like, well. I think Kentucky had to beat Texas. That was the only way that Tennessee could still be alive in the SEC championship game. And after the dust is settled, you're kind of like, oh, kind of glad that didn't work out then because Tennessee just beat Vanderbilt, and then you don't have to worry about leaving it up to the committee what happens if you lose the SEC championship game.
Yeah, that really is strangely fortuitous. I think because
Austin said SMU's already in no matter what. So
yeah.
So then I guess Clemson probably wants to get in the ACC championship game so they can have a chance to win it because otherwise it's going to be tough. They're going to need help to get in.
Yeah, they're not making it in unless they win an ACC championship game. It's too tenuous at this point. But that SMU one, that is one that I think you could see a quote unquote punishment for losing in the championship game. If
Oh, yeah.
SMU loses to Miami, I think SMU's out.
Yeah, because that would help Alabama probably get in somehow if they beat Auburn.
Kill me.
There's going to be people that lose their minds if a 3-loss Alabama team gets in.
Me. I'm going to be one of those. I mean, dude, I texted y'all this. I texted our A to Z group. If I'm thinking correctly, Alabama dropped as the same exact amount of spots after losing by 21 to a dump Oklahoma team. No, they've been getting better.
Hold on a second. Hold on.
Tennessee
beat that Oklahoma team. That's
true. They have a formidable defense. Yeah. A very formidable defense, that Oklahoma team.
Quality win.
Yeah. But an Oklahoma team that hasn't been able to score on anybody. Yeah. And Alabama loses to them by 21 and drops the same amount of spots as Tennessee did when they lost to Georgia. And Tennessee had the lead in that game for almost half the game. And one point, it was a double-digit lead. And then they ended up, they lost by 14, but it was Georgia didn't have a 14-point lead until the final 3 minutes of the game. I mean, we all know how it played out.
You know what it is. Like, the committee saw that bad call against Alabama on the illegal touching call, and they're like, if not for that, this game's a lot closer. Maybe Alabama even wins. So they had to factor that in.
Kill me if Bama makes it in, man. That just please.
And last year when that debate happened with Florida State, and we're all like, Florida State did all that they could do, and they probably deserve it. But we all know Alabama and Georgia are better than Florida State, right? This season, I don't know. Like, I know that's a big win for Tennessee beating Alabama, but you've lost to Vanderbilt, you've lost to Oklahoma by 21 points. I don't think you can just say, like, okay, Alabama's better than Clemson. Like, I don't think you can assume that at all.
Absolutely not. Jalen Milroe can't throw a forward pass.
Yeah, he's had like 2 good games this year. Like the game against Georgia and the game against LSU. And outside of that, it's been pretty rough.
Yeah, they do not have a workable QB in some of these games. Like Milroe, sometimes he plays out of his mind. That game at LSU, he ran all over them.
Yeah, there's times he looks like the best player on the field, and there's times he looks like he has no clue how to play football. It's weird.
Yeah, I mean, Dustin in the comments, he says, not only that, they only scored 3 points. That's horrible. No matter who the opponent is. That's true. It doesn't matter if it's Oklahoma, and Oklahoma's defense has been good. I mean,
especially when you're Kalen DeBoer, and that's supposed to be your calling card is offense. Like if Tennessee scored 3 points at Oklahoma, you would be hearing about it for 30 minutes tonight as to why they're not in the the top 10 or whatever, 12.
But I would say this. I think your rooting interest within the SEC is this, at least in my opinion. Texas beats Texas A&M so that just stays clean. And then, well, I don't know. I guess that could work out fine.
I think if A&M beats Texas and then Texas loses to Georgia, I think, see, we don't know how the committee will recognize it, but I feel like Texas has to drop below. If A&M beats Texas, then Texas doesn't reach the SEC championship game, so they can't use that. And then Georgia beats A&M. Yeah, I think in that scenario, Texas would have to fall below Tennessee because Tennessee has the better wins. And the losses would be tilted in Texas's favor a little bit because they both lost to Georgia, and they're going to say A&M's better than Oklahoma, which I'm fine. It's true. I mean, it's accurate. But they just don't have the wins. Like, I think you would have to drop Texas below, and that could vault Tennessee into a home playoff game, probably hosting Texas if that's how it fell, to be honest.
Yeah, so, I mean, maybe we should just be rooting for chaos, frankly. Yeah. I don't – unless Ohio State loses to Michigan or something along those lines, like teams that you could genuinely hop, I think in that case you would probably hop Ohio State. I mean, that's a bad loss. That Michigan team.
If you lose to Michigan, yeah,
that's bad. That's not like losing to Indiana. If they had lost to Indiana, okay, Indiana's already
and it's a home too. You said at Ohio State, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's.
I think that one. Tennessee hops up there. Miami losing to Cuse. Tennessee hops up there. There are things that Notre Dame losing to USC. Tennessee
that would be real helpful.
Yes.
USC. I think USC is the team that, if you want to see Tennessee host a playoff game, which clearly you do, I mean that's a huge advantage. And playing on the road is just getting more and more difficult. It seems like you really want to host in the first round. I think that's your best path is if
Yeah.
USC beats Notre Dame. Like that's the cleanest, no argument. They're dropping below Tennessee no matter what in that situation.
I think as far as the SEC goes, kind of agnostic. As long as you take care of your business and you beat Vandy, I don't think it matters really one way or another. In my opinion, I think they will drop Georgia maybe one spot. And so you would no longer play them in that
But see
9A
that's the interesting
if they
thing there
lose.
though. Would they actually drop Georgia? Because at that point you would know that you're flipping a home game. And let me tell you, if they lose that game, Kirby Smart is going to do some politicking in the TV, post game, whatever. And that's what it's going to come down to is
I don't think they're
you're
gonna.
flipping Athens and Knoxville. That's what would happen. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think they would. I think they would say no. Georgia beat Tennessee earlier, and they're going to suddenly honor the head to head, even though it's a 3-loss team.
Except you do have a common opponent also in Alabama. They lost
true.
Alabama. I mean, there's more than just the head to head. Although obviously you would say like the head to head sort of the end all be all there, but like it's not just across the board easy peasy like that.
Well, they haven't been consistent with that at all, really.
No, I don't know exactly what they do, and that's why I say I wonder if they would drop Georgia and drop Tennessee down a spot where Tennessee continues to not host, but they don't play. You know, Georgia gets kicked out of hosting, and Tennessee just drops even down because you have to be behind Georgia because you lost to them. You know, something I like.
Terrence here says, do we think USC will beat Notre Dame? I don't think anything at this point. This season's been so all over the place that I don't have a crystal ball.
Man,
these are just scenarios that we think like if this happens, it would be good for Tennessee. I mean, if I'm betting on Notre Dame in that game, just hoping that USC pulls it off somehow.
Notre Dame's got a nasty defense. It's pretty good. I will say everybody's hawked on that NIU loss all season, but I almost look at it and go, how did they lose to NIU? Because playing against, they haven't played a strong schedule by any stretch of the imagination, but they've beaten some teams in spots where I've been like, okay, like these guys look pretty decent. Like they are not total pushovers. So I'll just say I'm saying my prayers for USC, and hopefully Lincoln Riley pulls a rabbit out of the hat. That'd be nice. Again, it just feels like it was so chaotic this last week that it feels like it's going to be rubber band back to the mean. Like it just like you used up all of that karma last week, and now maybe not. I don't know.
We'll say, see, Austin mentioned, I don't think the committee would set up a rematch in the first round. I don't think they would either, but everything they keep saying is that that's not going to be a factor, that they're not going to reseed to avoid that. They're just going to seed and however it falls. I mean, Heather Dinich was on the Pat McAfee show today talking about the possibility of Tennessee playing Georgia and Athens in a rematch and how the committee isn't going to actively avoid that, which I think is completely dumb because we already know what happened in that game. Let Tennessee play Indiana. Let them play Notre Dame. You know, let them settle those debates on the field. And likewise, let Georgia play Penn State or however it shakes out. I think you should want to get those matchups because, I mean, that's been the debate the whole month is SEC versus Big Ten versus ACC and all this stuff. Well, let's see it play out on the field. And you can only do that if they play in the playoff. Why would you want these rematches? I don't know why they would go down that road.
Never forget this, because this week is just a projection. This means nothing. The committee has to commit to nothing.
Well, they kind of do commit. They do kind of commit to these rankings though, because they're making these changes week to week instead of season long. Looking at the whole body of work. So whatever they did this week, we can't just suddenly jump Indiana back over Tennessee, right? If Tennessee beats Vanderbilt and Indiana beats Purdue, which is terrible, that shouldn't. You kind of have to. You've kind of put yourself in a corner. You can come back a week later and be like, oh, I don't know about that. Like maybe I feel like this team's better than that team. then you flip it and it's this whole deal, and one fan base is going to be incredibly pissed off, and I don't blame them because it's like, well, you've already set the standard, now you're going back on that.
I will stick by this until it's proven otherwise. Do not forget that this thing's a TV show. Yeah. Like, this is a production, and they want the ratings. They want, like, think about how sensational it would be to have these huge brand names playing these home games against each other. And I think a retread with Georgia makes less sense in that scenario because we've already watched it. It was on ESPN, and I think what would it possibly be if Georgia wins the SEC championship game, they hop up. Right now, I'm not sure. Would they hop Ohio State? Maybe?
They would have a bye. I mean, at this point, if they win the SEC championship, they're going to be in that top 4.
So they would hop Ohio State, but I think Ohio State would probably only drop down. Losing to Oregon, they probably only drop down to like 5. So you're talking. I mean, it probably, the change would come somewhere in that ACC, Notre Dame, whatever, and it would be one of those. Which all of those are bigger-ish brands. Miami can't sell a football ticket in their stadium, but it is a big brand, weirdly.
If it's just chalk and everybody wins that's supposed to win, and Georgia, wins the SEC championship, regardless of what happens with Texas, I think it would push you into a road game against Notre Dame. Maybe I think would be probably the most likely scenario for Tennessee if everything stayed the same.
That sounds right. Yeah, because Georgia. Does Texas come into play for you if they have no resume? Is it, you got to go to Austin and play? Because that's a matchup that hasn't happened.
Yeah, I think that's a scenario where here's how this I think will play out. If Texas beats Texas A&M and then they lose to Georgia in the SEC championship, they're going to have one regular season, or they're going to have 2 losses to Georgia, one in the regular season. I don't think they're going to double penalize them for losing to Georgia. So I don't think Tennessee would jump them in that scenario. So it could come into play that it's either you go to Notre Dame or you go to Austin and play Texas down there. I think that would be the most likely scenarios.
Yeah. Either way, I think that the committee likes either one of those. And I think as far as the SEC goes, I think that's the most likely. Like Texas and Texas A&M, whatever shuffles out there, ultimately I think Georgia wins that thing because they're just the better team if Carson Beck plays a half-decent football game.
and they lost it last year, so they're going to – it's a Kirby Smart team. They'll come out to play.
That feels like chalk there. It's a total toss-up between Oregon and Ohio State. Who else? I had it open. Total toss-up between Oregon and Ohio State. The ACC is a complete mess.
Is that so? Dustin's mentioning here the Big Ten champion. Is that how that plays out against Ohio State?
It would be now that could shuffle around if let's say Arizona State wins all the way out there at number 12 right now, but if they win all the way out and they get sort of chosen above Boise State would bounce back down to that 12 spot, and I'm not sure Boise State is set in stone at the moment either. But because you have UNLV hanging out there and Army and some other things that could happen there. Boise State hasn't been playing very good football. They almost lost to Wyoming over the weekend. I feel like we could just talk in circles around all of the things that could happen here because it's not going to be just one thing, and it's not going to be complete chalk. I don't think it almost never works out that way because I feel like Miami, huge outlier. In no way is that Syracuse game a given, and especially in no way is that ACC championship game a given, and especially it's not a given that the committee is not just going to give you a pass for losing in a championship game. I'll believe that when I see it because they literally did it last year at Georgia. Oh, yeah. I'll believe it when I see it.
It's going to be very situational.
So, yes, it's going to be a wild time, but the primary fact is if Tennessee beats Vandy, you're in. That is all but set in stone.
I like Terrence's comment here. I think a lot of people feel this way about Penn State being at number 4. Who have they beat? They're really getting the benefit of the doubt. I
You don't have
completely
to play in the championship game either.
yeah, I completely agree. I think a lot of people agree, but at the same time, like we have to react to how the committee's ranking these teams at this point, and I'm sure we all have opinions on what it should be, how we should view some of these teams, but we kind of got to react to what they do and what we think they will do, not what necessarily what they should do. Which it's just like two completely different conversations at that point. So this is more based on what we think the committee will end up doing.
It's gonna be interesting. I mean, we're not even commenting on the actual placement because I definitely got opinions there. I don't think Indiana should be in this thing at all. I think they got their butt kicked so badly that it showed they don't belong. That's one. I think Miami stinks. I think they're ranked way too high. Penn State. I think Penn State. Like, who have you beaten? You've done nothing. The fact
Elias is right. Michigan 2023 is carrying a lot of water for the Big Ten right now.
I mean, good Lord. No kidding. The Big Ten is 3 teams. I mean, that is it. And I'm not including Indiana, but it is Penn State, it is Oregon, it is Ohio State, and it's barely Penn State. I mean, Penn State almost lost to Minnesota last week. Who are we kidding?
It's Indiana's biggest argument when you hear them talk about, what have they proven? And it's, well, they beat the 2 teams in the championship last year. Like both those teams' coaches are gone. A lot of great players are gone. The quarterbacks from both teams are gone. A lot of the defensive players. I mean, they're 2 completely different teams. Obviously, I mean that should have no bearing on anything.
Austin, I did hear Austin Stanley says Word Emmanuel said Indiana played good football early against Ohio State, and the Buckeyes ran away late. It was 28-7 in the third quarter. 28-7 in the third quarter. Am I taking crazy pills?
Good on Ryan Day for scoring that late touchdown. And I know Indiana fans were mad about that. I saw all kinds of stuff on social media, but look, if you don't understand that at this point, then you're not really in the playoff hunt, or you're not built for it or something.
Yeah.
Because at this time, that's what you got to do. If Tennessee can score late with 10 seconds to go against Vanderbilt, they're going to do it.
Yes.
Anybody, and they should. Everybody should at this point, because at this point, it's what the committee is demanding. Like, you have to run the score up. I mean, it's like it used to be back in the old days in the 90s when people were trying to win with style points. They can move up in the rankings. You have to do it at this point, because clearly they recognize that and they're factoring it in. So, Ryan Day did what he had to do. And considering his back's been up against the wall at times because of losing to Michigan and stuff in recent years, I don't blame him one bit for it, and I think it was the right move, and I think Indiana fans are a little soft for being mad about that.
Yeah, well, and they have absolutely no reference for anything. This is the first time they've probably
it's true. It is their first experience.
the first time they've ever paid attention to football at all. So, well, on that note, let's talk about this Vandy game, because ultimately all of that talk doesn't matter if Tennessee loses to Vanderbilt. They have to go to Vandy. This is, I think it's going a little underreported how huge of a game this is for Josh Heupel. I don't mean to put undue pressure on this guy, but it's going to be a tough conversation if Tennessee doesn't win this game. And so let's go ahead and talk about it, Zach, right after I tell you about the good folks at Farm Bureau. Farm Bureau has been serving Tennesseans for over 75 years. Much has changed in Tennessee over the years, but some have stayed the same. Farm Bureau Health Plans has always valued personal relationships, especially when it comes to good health and good service. Plan on Farm Bureau Health Plans for health, dental, and vision. For better coverage, better rates, and better service, go to fbhp.com/ATOZ or walk into one of their 200-plus locations across the state. That is fbhp.com/ATOZ. Farm Bureau Health Plans. Thanks to them. All righty. Tennessee travels to Nashville. Just a short 2.5-hour drive over to the West End Avenue. And this game is dicier than any Tennessee fan probably thought it was going to be before the season started, because Vandy is better than anybody thought they were going to be. Add on to that this whole playoff element. And this is a pressure-packed spot for Josh Heupel. And maybe I'm not listening to every sports show in town. and this definitely isn't getting talked about at a national level. This is a volatile spot for Josh Heupel. You make it, it's the celebration. You've reached. You're in the perfect spot. You're living the dream. This is what every Tennessee fan has wanted. You have your chance. You are in the playoff. You have a chance to win a national championship. You are right there. You're where you want to be, and you don't even have to play an SEC championship game. It's incredible. If you lose, this is probably overly dramatic, but also I'm not sure it is. This is the beginning of the end for Josh Heupel. And I look. I know everybody's going to hear that and they're going to go, oh boy, here we go. No. Go ahead and tell me how many Tennessee football coaches survived losing to Vandy. I'll go ahead and tell you the answer. It's 0. You don't lose to Vandy and make it out of this place alive. So, is he going to get fired the next day? Absolutely not. And he might not get fired years down the road. But you will never look at this man the same way if he loses this game. That will be a crushing moment on a level that, as of right now with Tennessee football, is nearly unimaginable. And again, I don't mean to be overly dramatic. Think about it. Like, Zach, seriously, how crushing will that be if Tennessee loses this game? You lost the playoff, and you lose to Vandy, which is embarrassing when the playoff's not on the line. Am I wrong?
No, not totally. Not when you frame it that way. I don't know about the beginning of the end talk, but
that's like I said, it's over dramatic. It's over dramatic.
You never know, but it would be. When you say you'll never look at this man the same again, I think that's probably true. Unless down the road he avenges it or gets to the playoff, wins a championship or something. Obviously, that would erase a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, it'd be terrible. It would be up there with it'd be worse than the 2016 loss to Vanderbilt because that was just for the Sugar Bowl, which was pretty big, but a different scale, obviously. Though at the time it felt pretty big. And the loss to South Carolina 2 years ago, which you still kind of give Heupel a pass for a little bit just because of the weird situation. Columbia has been tough on coaches in the past at various schools. It was a weird deal. The did they have the signs? All that stuff. There's a lot that goes into that game and that night. This one's definitely different because I feel going into this game that you're not in the same mindset that you were 2 years ago. I think everybody on the planet knows that they walked into Columbia in 2022 and they thought it was done. They thought they had the playoff wrapped up, and they didn't. They lost it that night. And going into this game, I don't sense that is the mindset at all. Not from the team, not from the coaches. I feel like they know what's on the line. They know Vanderbilt's good. Vanderbilt's not going to catch anyone off guard after beating Alabama earlier. And they've still played teams tough. They played Texas really tough. They played LSU tough. And I know LSU's struggled lately, but that was still a night game in Baton Rouge. You lost by 1 touchdown down there. It's going to be a tough game. And Clark Lee is a good coach. He gets his team motivated. They like playing for him, and they've got a dog at quarterback in Pavia who, the harder you hit him, I think the better he plays at times. And he's the type of player that can win a game like this. He's already done it against Alabama. I mean, that was a game that a couple times it looked like Alabama was like, all right, they're Vanderbilt can't do this. They're not going to pull this off. And every time that happened, Pavia was there to help pull them out of it and eventually get the win. So I think that's the good news, though, because you're the more talented team. Clearly, like there's no doubt about it that you're the more talented team across the board. So if you go in there with the right mindset, I feel like this is a game that you should win because I think that's the biggest way that you lose this game is overlooking Vandy, and it's just not going to happen. But I think Tennessee better be careful. They better understand that Vanderbilt's making it personal. Clark Lee said the game was personal today. He hates losing to Tennessee. He said it's made him sick to his stomach the last 3 years, leaving Knoxville, leaving the stadium in Nashville after losing to Tennessee. Pavia, the mindset he has, I mean, you flash back to last season and the fight that happened between Vanderbilt and Tennessee because of the way Tennessee was roughing up A.J. Swan a little bit and some stuff the refs were letting go. I think this is going to be another chippy game, and Vanderbilt's going to be there. Like they're on a mission. They want to take the playoffs from Tennessee. They want to get that 7th win. So it's gonna be a dogfight, and hopefully Tennessee's prepared for that. It sounds like they are, but it might be even more intense than they realize. It's gonna be one of those games where it's clear that it's an in-state rivalry from watching it.
It's an incredible opportunity running both ways. Obviously, for Tennessee, the playoff is on the line and it's massive. It's the biggest opportunity that you have had in football in, name your year, in forever. And on Vandy's side, they're already bowl eligible. They're already having the time of their lives this season relative to how they usually have been. And
yeah, the pressure's on Tennessee.
It is. And there is just no way around that talking point. And I saw one or two people there saying, "Oh, Charlie's going negative." I'm not, because I'm about to go positive. Don't worry. I am. There's a lot going in Tennessee's favor in this one. But you just can't overlook that fact that if Josh Heupel lets it, this is the, for lack of a better word, this is the lemon booty spot. This is the seize up, get scared, deer in headlights. Oh no, the playoffs on the line, and we're not supposed to lose this game. And blah, 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 blah. But with that said, and with that out of the way, there's a lot going in your favor also in this game. For one thing, it's Vandy, and Tennessee has historically, obviously, beaten Vandy so often. So very much often have they beaten Vandy. It's not like it's something that's out of the realm of possibility. Nobody's doing it. You're going to Nashville, but Tennessee will have more fans there than Vandy will have fans there. It's going to be better than most years for Vandy. I have no doubt about that. It's going to be a little bit better than most years because of the season that they've had. But Tennessee will still have more fans there because that's Vandy Stadium, and it's their own fault. And so there's that. It's not like it's going to be a true road environment. It is a day game. It is a noon game. Josh Heupel's record in noon games, found this out in a tweet today, 14-1 in noon games. And like one of those being that complete blowout of LSU in Death Valley in 2022. And famously, Heupel practices early with his team, and theoretically they're kind of set up for success in an early game.
And you played an early game last week after a bunch of night games, so you kind of got
also
recalibrated there.
This last week you played a running quarterback, and I think that's advantageous. Now he ripped off some decent sized runs on you. They scored 0 points.
Pavia's joined too on Saturday.
Yes.
Like it's joined. There's going to be a 3rd and 13 that this guy converts from his own 7, and we're all going to throw things. It's
100%. that is going to happen. Prepare your mind now. Win or lose, that's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I think if you can use all those elements that are going for you, and also at the end of the day, you are the more talented team. Everybody knows it. Vanderbilt knows it. You're the more talented team that's had more success this season in a spot where you're going to have more fans in the stands, and yada yada yada. We all know. And if you go out, and the real key to me in this one is do not let Vandy play their game. That's what happened to Alabama. Mm-hmm. Look at that box score. I looked at this today. I was shocked because I think I saw this when this game happened, but the time of possession, 42 minutes of possession for Vandy in that game, 17 for Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, do that.
It was brutal.
If you're doing that, you better be hitting on deep shots like 70-yard touchdowns.
Exactly. I mean, they will hold this ball, and that's different from what you saw with UTEP as a sort of warm-up. Yes, they had a running quarterback, but UTEP moved much quicker. Vandy will drag this.
The UTEP coach doesn't have the patience to 40 seconds to run a play.
Absolute psycho. Clark Lee, a better, more measured coach. And I mean, they will drag this thing down into the mud if you let them. But how you can avoid that is do what you did at Georgia. Bury these boys in a hole early. And they're not going to come back like Georgia did, in my personal opinion. In the way that they are formulated, I mean, they're running, I mean, it's almost like a triple option wing tee, just a lot of design quarterback runs. They will throw on you. But honestly, the only again, for Alabama, the only team that I've seen them actually throw on was Alabama. Yeah, legitimately, like over the top bombed on. was Alabama.
Tennessee's a better defensive team than Alabama. It's really
Yes.
not even that close, to be honest. I mean, they have a culture. Alabama's still figuring theirs out with the new coaching staff and all that. Tennessee's got the much better athletes. I mean, they should be able to control and limit so much of that. And also, Mr. Jones talking about it here, Boo Carter and special teams. It does. I mean, he's definitely due to score on one of these punt returns.
Yes.
And Tennessee plays a lot of athletes on special teams. Like they're not just putting third and fourth string guys out there. Like that's an area where they feel like they can have an advantage and flip the game around. So I mean, I think that's very much in play. The last time you played in Nashville, D. Williams ran one back against Vanderbilt. So it's something you've done against the Clark Lee team before. I think that'll be a big part of it. Hopefully he has a few chances to break one off, but that could be huge, if you can get Boo Carter in the end zone there.
I also wonder the shape of Pavia. We've had this discussion about him kind of perpetually through the season with the way that he has to kind of carry that team. I mean, they got some other guys. They have a formidable offensive line, couple of receivers. It's not all just Pavia. But, I mean, he lays his body on the line for this team, and they just played a game in Death Valley that they lost, and he took a beating. And I was trying – yeah, I mean, I was trying to look.
He's definitely playing. I mean, he said today, no matter what, he's playing. I mean, that's –
oh, yeah. I'm not saying he's not playing.
He's 100% banged up. Like, he's not fully healthy at all. But he's got that Jeff Brom in the XFL mentality of, like, he's going out there to play no matter what. It's going to be tough to knock him out of the game. But, I mean, Tennessee's done that a few times this year with quarterbacks. So they're going to get to him. It's inevitable, I feel like. So that's definitely something to watch for sure.
I mean, he ran against LSU, ran 6 times for 43 yards. He was sacked once.
And that was a close game. That was a close game. LSU's not very good, but
yeah,
they have good athletes still.
You definitely have a better defense than LSU has.
Yeah.
So this game doesn't set up perfectly for you, but it sets up well for you because you are the superior team. You should have more fans in the building. I think your defense, while a running quarterback has been an annoyance for them for sure, they haven't lost their mind against a running quarterback. You contain Jalen Milroe really effectively. And like you've shown that when you really put your mind to it, you can stop that also. And so I think, to me, this really comes down to, can they come out and punch Vandy in the mouth early? And I think you could all but end it that way, is just score, get up 10, have it be 17-7 at halftime. And I don't think they're coming back from that. And I think it may end up close, but I think you win.
Yeah, you got to play with the lead in this game. You can't let them burn clock. It's kind of like the short passing game, the running quarterback stuff, thrown to their tight ends, which is something that Tennessee struggled with. They struggled badly against Georgia, and that's something Vandy can do. I think you've got to. It's kind of like Mike Vrabel last night talking on the Manning cast, talking about defending Lamar Jackson. He's like, it's kind of the opposite of the way teams have been playing Tennessee, where you're trying to keep from getting beat over the top. Against Lamar Jackson, you make him beat you outside the numbers, right? Like that's what Mike Vrabel said. And that's what you got to do with Pavia. I think like you've got to take away the underneath stuff, and you've got to say, try to beat us over the top, try to beat us outside the numbers. Like don't respect that as much. Take away that underneath stuff, clog up the middle, don't get beat in the middle of the field. I think that might be the philosophy that the defense needs to take here. And if he beats you on a shot, he beats you. I mean, I think that's just a chance you got to take. You cannot let them go on these methodical drives down the field, like you were alluding to, and chew up 8 minutes of clock on a drive. Like that's how you get Tennessee in trouble. And if they get a lead and they can do that, it's so tough because then Tennessee almost has to play perfect and score every chance they get to get back in that game.
Well, and specifically with your own offense, you saw against Georgia, and let's be clear, Georgia's defense is way better than Vandy's defense, but still, you saw against Georgia, Tennessee can shoot its own self in the foot with time of possession, where they went on a drive for 6.5 minutes and punted the ball. I mean that's Tennessee's Tennessee's offense this season is capable of that. It's not just giant shots over the top. You score in 30 seconds and you run the score up. I mean, Tennessee has gone on plotting drives, and sometimes those don't work out. And then suddenly there is only 3 possessions in the first quarter, and the first quarter's already gone, and you've lost time, and you're not up, and I that's why just come out, hit him in the mouth, and make sure you're playing from in front for this game. And I think you're good. Playing from behind, obviously, Tennessee has come back against Florida. You've come back
Alabama.
Against Alabama. You came back against Arkansas too, although you ultimately lost. It is possible, but I do like you will get no pass from me as far as this Vandy game goes. You should win. Period. And I'm not uber confident. Pavia's a dog. Is an absolute dog. But even with Pavia, has to be a win for Tennessee. It has to be. This is and it should be, in a positive way, a career-defining game for Josh Heupel, because it will be Tennessee getting back into the playoff with a chance to play for a national championship, and just make it that. Yes, it's high pressure, because if you lose, again, like I said, you're going to be viewed differently from here on out, because you'll suddenly be a guy that lost to Vandy. But if you win, you're the king of this town. So that's no pressure. Hey, I think nothing big.
I think a win in this game too really just propels you into the playoff with some momentum, especially if you don't win big. I mean, if the offense can kind of come together and you put up 40 points, that would be huge. But this is a spot that Heupel hasn't ever really been in as a coach, right? Like 2022 was a little different. I think we all took that for granted, because South Carolina had not been playing well at that time. I think they were coming off a loss to Florida. They just looked way overmatched. I mean, even South Carolina folks were picking Tennessee to win in a blowout that week. And it didn't happen, but you still had 2 games left in the season. It wasn't like this scenario of like Tennessee needs to win and they're in. It was this 4-team playoff. You weren't really sure how things were going to shake out. Tennessee looked like they were in good shape. Now you're in this situation that really nobody's been in, with this 12-team playoff, where it's like, okay, this is like the first round. It's like a play-in game almost for Tennessee. Like, you've got to win to advance into the tournament.
Yep.
Whatever you did in 22, it didn't work. Like that speech that you gave the team before you played South Carolina, that week of preparation, it wasn't good enough. It did not work. What do you do this week? What's Heupel's approach this week? Because he doesn't have something that he can fall back on. It's like, this is what I usually do here. Like, this Nick Saban, this is what I did for 15 years before Alabama played a big game. This is Heupel kind of starting that legacy, hopefully, for himself. How does he approach this week? I mean, I think it's a, kind of to piggyback off what you said, it is a huge career-defining moment for him, because you have to prove, you've lost these games on the road to Arkansas. You can't beat Georgia yet. You've lost to Florida and Alabama. Both times you went on the road to play them. Like, you've had these troubles in these big games that mean something. This sets up nice because you got more talent. It's not a crazy atmosphere. You shouldn't have a ton of false starts and pre-snap penalties. Just the crowd shouldn't really be a factor. And it's all there for you. It's as easy as it could be for a team in this situation without it being automatic, if that makes sense. Like, it couldn't set up any better for Tennessee. If you asked any Tennessee fan, would you take this every single year? You got to beat Vandy to get in at the end of the year. That's the only thing you got to do. I mean, you're taking that 10 times out of 10.
Yep.
So, I think I agree with you. You do have to come through. It is going to be a pretty big stain on his record if you lose this game.
Name it, Zach. What's the final score?
I think Tennessee wins. I think they said earlier, they got the right mindset. They know what's at stake. They're not overlooking Vandy. They know what Vandy's going to bring. They know what kind of player Pavia is. They've been watching him do it all year. No one's going to be caught off guard. At this point, teams run what they run, right? Like, there's no big secrets. This is the 4th time that these coaches have gone against each other, Lee and Heupel. Like, they know what each other's got. So it's who's the better team, who's more talented, who can go execute when the pressure's on. I think Tennessee showed against Georgia in that first half that they can be that team. I think some things just didn't go their way, and Georgia's a pretty good team still. and it was a really tough road environment. I don't really fault them for losing that game that much. There's some things they need to do better. So that performance still gives me some confidence, though, going into this game. So I think Tennessee wins. I think it could be, kind of like a lot of the games Tennessee's played this year, like the Kentucky game and stuff. I think it's something like a 30-20 win for Tennessee.
30-20. I like that. I'll say, for anybody watching, we got a bunch of people watching right now. Drop into the comments if you want to give us your score prediction. We've already got some. Chip says 31-13. Vols beat Vandy. Charles says no excuses. 48-17. That would just be so fun. If you just smash, all of this build up. Pavia, ha, 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 and then you just go in and smash their head in.
I think, like you said, though, I don't know if they're going to have enough possessions to score that many points. That's the only reason I think it's going to be a little bit lower.
That would be your defense really has a great day if you could score 48. Dustin says 34-16, 41-17 says Terrence. Elias says 33-17, 42-14 for Mr. Jones.
If you win 42-14, I think you might. You might have it, and Notre Dame barely wins. I don't know. It could be interesting. You have a case to jump some teams if you blow out the team that beat beat Alabama.
Yeah. I mean, that would be, I think that's potentially significant if you can really lay it on Vandy. I think that this is, you're not going to break the norm of this season, but I will say this. Nico has been progressing. I think he's continued to just look more comfortable. Has he looked completely locked in and at every single moment he's throwing a great pass? No, he had a pretty bad overthrow against UTEP.
Game still speeds up a little bit on the time.
So sometimes he's a little behind, but overall I think he's getting there closer every week. Here, Vandy's run defense is stronger, at least statistically. Its run defense is stronger than its pass defense. And I think Dylan Sampson, dog's going to be a dog. He'll probably have a pretty big game. And then just in terms of running it up, it comes down to Nico, right? I think he'll have a pretty good game. And then the defense plays a game much closer to what we've seen earlier in the season. Do they shut down Pavia again? No, I don't think so. But he doesn't have a day good enough to beat Tennessee. Tennessee does win. What would the final score be? I'll go 20-27. Max Gilbert gets a little work. 27-17. You don't cover. And Josh Heupel has won and covered against Vandy all 3 years, at Vandy and at home. But I'll say he misses covering by 1 point. It's an 11-point game. I'll say 27-17. Like you said, not a ton of possessions to be had. Tennessee playing slower than usual. Vandy purposely playing as slow as possible. And that's what you get. So I'll say Tennessee does make the playoff. They lock it in, and we're celebrating at the end of Saturday. Kevin says 27-13 Vols. Will says 34-20. I certainly hope it is all of these that all of us have said, and we don't have to have any kind of annoying conversation about Tennessee losing this game. I mean, this feels like, what this feels similar to? Knocked over my mic. I got so excited. You know what this feels similar to is Vitello, that first go around when he was on the doorstep of the College World Series. They played LSU, if I'm thinking correctly. They played LSU on the doorstep of the College World Series, and you went, we're better than LSU. We should beat this team and make it to a College World Series. Wouldn't that be amazing? Ultimately they kind of similar again to this football team. They weren't the best team in the deal like the baseball team was this past season. Like when you get to the College World Series, it's going to be an uphill climb. But if you get there, anything's possible. And the baseball team went out and slapped around LSU. I believe they won in a blowout couple of games there. And here you have an opportunity to do the same. Go out, take the bull by the horns. I do. I did. I did really like. I saw Mr. Jones here. He called them the commode doormats.
I've seen that.
I have never heard that. I've heard the commodadors. I have not heard the. You could say the commodore mats. But I like the combination of both the commode doormats. That's great. And we'll leave it at that. Go beat the commode doormats. Anything else for the folks at home, Zach, before we bounce out here?
Yeah, no, I saw a lot of comments about David Sanders, 5-star Vols commit.
yeah.
I don't think there's a lot that we can really glean from the whole situation at this point. Clearly, it's this kid's. It's getting close to time to put your name on the line, right? And Ohio State and Tennessee were always like his top two, and you get down this close to the end, and it's like you want to make sure you're making the right decision for yourself, where you're going to be happy, which you take fandom out of it. I mean, that's what any college kid would do. I don't think it's a money situation. I think it just comes down to where he thinks he fits best, and I don't know that he knows that at this point. So all the speculation is kind of hard to say. Oh, it's 60% this, 40% that. Like, there's really no way to tell. I will say that you got to watch this weekend. If he goes to Ohio State, Michigan, I'd be like, yeah, okay, this kid's probably not going to go to Tennessee is how I would feel. It doesn't mean for sure he's not, but I think that would be super concerning if he ends up out there this weekend for that game. Outside of that, like, we just got to see how obviously he picked Tennessee for a reason.
Yeah. If he goes to that Michigan Ohio State game, he's going to Ohio State.
Feels that way, right?
Opinion.
Like,
yeah. Oh, and even Vance in the comments says that word is if he gets to the Michigan game, he will flip to Ohio State.
Yeah. So we'll see.
I mean, two visits, 2 weeks in a row, the week of signing day, like you're going to that.
And I would say when it comes to that Michigan Ohio State game, it's Tuesday. You might hear 100 things between now and Friday, but how many, with recruiting stuff, you just never know. Like this Sanders visit to Ohio State kind of materialized late, and you hear all the time about kids going, they don't make it. I mean, you really don't know until they either are or aren't there, because it's so volatile. So it's probably why recruiting is such a headache at times. Imagine me and Tennessee's coaches finding out about that visit that he's at Ohio State, and then you got to go coach against UTEP.
I know. That's why the signing day is so poorly timed. I mean, the fact that you have to do both at the same time is so ridiculous. But I would say if it is a money thing, pay up. You need that kid. But like you said, I don't think it is. I think it's a truly like, I can get giant money from either of these. Where do I want to go?
Yeah.
It seems like it's more of a situation like that. I don't know. I would say it would be not great to lose that kid, but he's gonna choose. He's gonna choose where he's gonna choose.
That would be two like instant impact 5-star offensive linemen 2 years in a row that you don't get. Jordan Seaton from last season, who is having a good year for Colorado as a true freshman, starting for them, playing really well. Obviously, a guy that Tennessee could have used. That would be tough.
Yeah, you need him. You need there's no way around that.
Yeah.
I guess we already have gone over. I did want to talk a little basketball, but I'll just say this: Rick Barnes' team looks really fun.
Chaz Lanier is the guy.
Dog alert on Chaz Lanier, man. He has the spirit of Dalton Connect in him. It is. And they're running the same action for him, too. I mean, truly just facilitating him. Hey, get this kid on the 3-point line. Let him throw it up. And which I love. I don't know if he's as much of a slasher as Connect. That'll kind of be, I mean, it's obviously still really early. That'll play itself out in time. But I think the thing that's impressed me to this point, that defense is nasty. And has really come together quickly, and it's probably no coincidence that this team has Jemai Mashak on it still and is playing elite defense. I mean, that guy, that's got to be just absolute hell having to play against Jemai Mashak on, offensively on a basketball court. But yeah, they look formidable for sure. Blew out Baylor, blew out Virginia. They got a game against Syracuse next week. Got a snoozer, I think, tomorrow. Lady Vols played a snoozer tonight, won by a bunch. But yeah, should be a fun season there. Obviously, we will get more into that in upcoming shows. But there you go. That is that. Charlie Burris, Zach Reagan. Thank you. This is a big show. Tons and tons of comments. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them. It was too much. But we appreciate everybody commenting, giving us their score predictions, always hanging out. It really does mean the world. We truly could not do it without you. Shout out to Zen Sports Farm Bureau. Go support them because they support us. I think that's it. That's a show. Go beat Vandy, please. We want to be talking. Want to be talking about a playoff after this. Please. No talk about what the other option is there. All playoff all the time. Go beat Vandy. Let's go do it. That's it. We will talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.